Hey guys, it's Chris at Highline Guitars, and today I'm going to share with you a simple tip that I use when I fabricate a nut for one of my guitars. Now when I make a nut, that's one of the last steps in the guitar building process, and typically I like to make the nuts out of cowbone or graphite, corian, and sometimes even brass. But no matter what material I use, I have to shape it to fit properly. And one of the important aspects of shaping is getting the height of that material correct so that when I cut the slots for the strings, I have enough material to cut those slots and I can cut them deep enough to get the proper action that I want. But where a lot of folks make a mistake is they'll remove too much material as they're shaping the blank to its final dimension. And I'm going to show you a simple trick that I use to help guarantee success every time you go to shape a nut prior to cutting the slots. So let me bring you in a little bit closer and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, in order to shape the nut to its final dimensions, I have to mark the dimensions or the shape onto the nut blank so that I know where to carve to without going too far. And to do this, I need to use a special tool to mark it. And it's basically just a pencil, a regular number 2 pencil. And what I'll do is I'll take a piece of sandpaper. In this case, it's just a small piece of 80 grit sandpaper. And I will begin to sand, removing the wood until I have sanded it into this sort of half of a pencil shape here. And this is the tool that I'm going to use to mark the nut blank so that I know how much material to remove to get the basic shape of my nut. So I'll show you how this works. Okay, so the first thing I have to do is cut a blank and roughly shape it so that it fits snug into the slot that I have on the front of my fretboard. Now, of course, every guitar is different. Some will have a slot like I've got here. Others will have a shelf like you would find on a Les Paul. So regardless, you want to make sure that the blank is sized to fit correctly, and it needs to be firmly seated on the fretboard. You don't want it to be sticking up on either end. It needs to be flat to the bottom of the slot or the shelf. Next, I'm going to take my half pencil tool that I made, and I'm going to place it on top of my frets. And you want it resting flat against the frets. You want the point all the way to the side. And then I'm going to run this pencil across, just like this. And ideally, you want to try to stay as close to the center line, parallel with the center line of the fretboard as you can in order to get that line drawn accurately. Next, I'll take the flat pencil, put the flat side against the side edge of the fretboard, and I'll press it, make sure it's in good contact with the fretboard, and I'll just make a small nick of a mark on the side there of the nut. Same thing on the other side. And that shows where I need to carve to. And what I can do now is I can take this blank out and I can cut and sand it to that line. And the key here is you need to leave the line when you're sanding. Don't sand it all the way down to where the line disappears. You want to sand right to that line. In fact, you may even want to go like a 64th to a 32nd of an inch outside of the line. Leave a little bit of material so that you can gradually carve and sand it down to its final shape. And then when I slot it, I'm going to slot to the very bottom of that pencil line, which indicates the radius. And typically in that situation, I usually end up with the strings a bit higher than I want them to be. So once I have the nut in position, I can do some final filing to get the slots to the correct depth. Okay, so as you can see, I have sanded the shape, and I left that line, and I'm about a 32nd of an inch above it. So when I insert it into the slot, I can take some thread, run it from the bridge all the way up to where this would be where the high E string would come in contact with the nut. And as you can see, it's still well above that first fret. So I am now ready to begin cutting the slots. And I will cut those slots down to right about where they would come into contact with that line, maybe about the middle of the line. And I would periodically check to make sure that I have the depth correct. And it's really a process of gradually approaching the final depth and dimensions of the nut. You have to be careful. If you go too far, you have to start over. But this is a great tool for accomplishing that task, the half pencil marking tool. So I hope you found this video to be useful. If so, give me a thumbs up. Click that subscribe button if you don't already subscribe. In the future, I'll probably do a video where I give some more tips on slotting nuts, and I'll probably be slotting this one here in the next day or so. So watch for that video in the coming weeks ahead. So I hope you have a great week, and I will see you soon.